Paul Metz took the airplane off, and he had two chase F-16s following him, and the F-16s had to go into afterburner to keep up with the aircraft in a climb. That sounds good, it's spectacular, but it's real. We do not need the afterburner to do a lot of things. That translates into longer range, less fuel consumption, so the aircraft can stay in the air longer, can fight longer.
Avoiding afterburner also makes the plane less susceptible to heat-seeking missiles. And the F-22 is equipped with thrust vectoring, the ability to change the direction of the thrust as it exits the engine, which helps to steer the plane. Thrust vectoring lets the plane take off faster, increases agility in the air, and gives it the ability to fly at extremely steep angles, known as high angles of attack. While other jets will stall or lose control, the F-22 is able to maneuver with abandon, a major advantage in a dogfight. Thrust vectoring also improves the Raptor's stealthiness. The movement of the engine exhaust nozzles makes it harder for the enemy to spot the F-22 with radar and infrared detectors. The instruments in the F-22 are also revolutionary. In combat, information about the enemy can make the difference between being the attacker or the target. The F-22 will give future pilots an enormous information edge through an innovation called sensor-fused avionics. On a single screen, the F-22 pilot can receive data from many information sources, ground and airborne radar, as well as other F-22s. All the data is instantly compiled and presented on an easy-to-interpret visual display. With one glance, he can spot fellow pilots, enemy targets, and enemy planes. Good guys are green, bad guys are red. The F-22 pilot can even determine the number and type of weapons the enemy planes are carrying.
Sensor-fused avionics has never before been done. There's not another airplane out there that does what the F-22 does.
The aircraft is projected at this point in time to become operational, deployed to the forces in 2003. It's a build-up, test-up program starting now in '98, where we'll be looking at basic flying performance of the aircraft, and then that'll be phased into an avionics development program. And then what we'll be doing is working with the operational community with weapons integration type testing. It'll take 4 to 5 years to get to that point, but when it's deployed, it'll be a fully operational, ready to go to war airplane.
The F-22 has been in development for over 25 years. Back in 1972, almost immediately after the F-15 air superiority fighter went into service, Air Force brass began making plans for their next generation fighter. The concept for this fighter of the future was called the Advanced Tactical Fighter, or ATF. In 1986, the Air Force took an unusual step and ordered actual working prototypes from two competing companies, a kind of duel. 4 years later, the top-secret prototypes were rolled out. The Lockheed Boeing General Dynamics team built the YF-23. The Northrop McDonnell Douglas team built the YF-23. The two airplanes would face off in head-to-head competition. The stakes were enormous. The winner would be awarded a prestigious and highly lucrative $70 billion contract. Both teams carried impeccable credentials. The YF-22 group included Lockheed, who developed the F-117 stealth fighter, Boeing, who had significant expertise in avionics and advanced materials, and General Dynamics, who designed and built the F-16. The YF-23 team included Northrop, whose F-5, F-20, and B-2 bomber made the company a leader in fighter design and stealth technology, and McDonnell Douglas, whose F-15 has never been shot down in combat. Each team's ATF prototype pushed the design boundaries even further. same time, Pratt & Whitney and General Electric competed for the engine contract. The fly-off began in September 1990. The two competitors were judged on the key flying qualities: maneuverability, supercruise, and stealth. The engineering and manufacturing plans were also carefully considered. Lockheed's written proposal was over 20,000 pages long. An intense but friendly rivalry developed between the competitors. There were 74 flights scheduled for each plane, involving various tests and establishing an awesome 70-degree angle of attack.
The fly-off was indeed a high-pressure environment. We had about 90 days to demonstrate those airplanes from scratch, from the first flight to the most we could extract from them, 90 days. When we had a common problem, like we had common engines, we were free to discuss it and make sure that we didn't have a safety issue. There was a friendly rivalry amongst professionals who had known each other for many years.
We knew we were up against a darn good airplane. We never gave those guys anything but the highest level of respect throughout the whole thing. We knew we were in a fight to the end, and I think it raised us to even a higher level. We knew all the pilots. We'd meet out in the parking lot, rib each other and have a good time.
I wanted to beat him fair and square. I didn't want to win because they dinged one of their airplanes. So we worked together a lot on safety, and we even flew at least one formation mission with them, mostly for PR. I knew I was in for a fight. I knew they would do a good job, and they did an excellent job. They had the second best airplane in the world.
Both planes performed flawlessly, and there was little difference in the test results. However, in August of 1991, the Air Force made their choice. The winner was the YF-22, built by the Lockheed Boeing General Dynamics team. Pratt & Whitney won the contract for the engine. The final report indicated the decision was based on more than just flying. It noted that the YF-22, quote, clearly offered better capability at lower cost, thereby providing the Air Force with a true best value, unquote. Of course, the decision also left the YF-23 test pilots without an assignment. But Paul Metz was uniquely qualified to change teams.
I knew Dave Ferguson, the pilot of the YF-22, very well, known him for years, but of course, in that environment of competition, we were separated in terms of our exchange of information, although we remained friendly. But one day, Dave and I got together, we said, look, Dave, somebody's going to lose this contest, and whoever loses it will put a resume on the other pilot's desk the next day. So the very next day, I gave Dave Ferguson a resume.
Today, the ghostly shell of the YF-23 sits alongside the runway at Edwards. The YF-22 program moved forward rapidly, but in April of 1992, disaster struck, and the program came to an abrupt halt. Test pilot Tom Morgenfeld was performing a routine flyby in the YF-22 so that photographers could get publicity shots.
I had lit the afterburner and picked the gear up, and about that time the airplane made a rather pronounced dive towards the runway. I pulled back on the stick, and the nose started up, but it was pretty obvious that I had a problem with pitch control on the airplane. Things happened pretty quickly after that.
The YF-22 began to oscillate wildly. Morgenfeld had a choice: try to fly out and risk a catastrophic disaster, or attempt a crash landing.
It is not uncommon in the early development phases of a program to have accidents because of things we didn't understand. He wandered into an area unexpected that we hadn't really thoroughly tested and simulated, and ran into a bucket of snakes, and he had seconds to decide what to do with that airplane. He made the decision, thinking that something had gone terribly wrong with the airplane, to put it down on the runway so that we'd have bigger pieces to analyze later on. That's not untypical of test pilot thinking. He wants to bring the thing back so people can figure out what went wrong so we can fix it next time.
Nobody likes to ever ding an airplane. Up to that point, I don't think I'd hardly ever scratched the paint on an airplane in 20-some years of flying. So no matter what happens, you always feel very, very badly about that. So much human effort goes into something like that that you feel very responsible.
Analysis of the accident revealed the source of the problem, a simple bug in the flight control system. Even though